For more content like this, log on to GibboPresents.com.
It's Gibbo, and right now I'm once again joined by Easy from Kosmik Movements, who on Saturday nights left Newark with another trophy for the collection after going up against King Shine in the third annual New Jersey Cup Clash. Easy, how are you?
Gibbo, pleasure as always.
Does this trophy mean more to you than usual, as you had to show heart and fight back from a deficit in order to earn it?
I wouldn't. It's no different than any other trophy. You know, it was a clash, just like any other clash. You know, I mean, this one just was controversial, but at the end of the day, it was just another day at the office. You know.
At the end of the night, King Shine did not want to take part in a tune for tune. What are your thoughts on Jimmy's decision?
I mean, that's his decision. I mean, he felt that, he did enough for the night that, we didn't deserve tune for tune. That was his opinion. And, ultimately he decided that, it wasn't worth it. Just leave it, but the crowd, at the end of the day, it's what the people say and what the crowd says. And, the crowd wanted to see tune for tune. So, that was his decision. And I have to respect, he felt that he did enough to win, and it just didn't,
Was there a discussion between yourself, Jimmy, and the promoter, Lady Anya, before the clash with regards to the rules and under what circumstances a tune for tune would take place?
The only thing I was told that there would be 3 rounds, 2 half-an-hour rounds, 4 rounds, 2 half-an-hour rounds, a 20-minute round, and a tune for tune if needed. That's what I was told before the clash, and that's what we went by.
Some people feel a clash should always end with a tune for tune unless one sound has won all the rounds. Others feel it should only be used as a tiebreaker if both sounds have won an equal number of rounds. Not with specific reference to Saturday night's clash, but in general, what are your thoughts on the issue?
Well, that's how clash is supposed to be. I mean, if a sound loses all the rounds, and he don't deserve tune for tune, and then if the crowd agrees, with that, then, that's what it is. But, in history, that's what it's always been, especially in one-on-one situations. If a sound, is winning every single round, and he calls for a lock off, and the crowd agrees with him, then I agree with that's how it should be,
So ultimately, it's the crowd's decision. It should be fluid depending on how the clash plays out.
Absolutely, it's always been like that. It's always, that it's the crowd's decision. The crowd makes the call.
It's certainly seemed like you guys kicked things up a gear in the third round. What was changed after round 2? What strategy did you come into round 3 with?
All right, well, of course, before every clash, we sit down and we build a strategy and how we want to, handle each clash. Every clash is different. Every sound is different. And, what we do is we do our homework. We do, listen back to cassettes, watch video, get as much research as possible. And when we sat down, to discuss this clash, every sound in the business has a strength and has a weakness, King Shine, hands down, their strength is their MC and their select, Jimmy Spliff, hands down, he knows how to work the crowd. He's very, very good, and basically he's a student of the game, and he scored an A. He scored an A. He was outstanding Saturday night, outstanding. His performance, can't take anything away from that, But and we know that's his strength. But we thought, well, what we figured out that we didn't feel that his box was able to keep up with it with us in a clash of that magnitude where there's 2 half an hours and a 20-minute. So we know our strength with our sound is our box. Our box is our strength. That's what's got us here. There's no denying that. And we knew that we couldn't really stand up to Jimmy's performance. We knew that ahead of time. We knew that. We sat down and we spoke about it. It was no going around that. But we didn't know what our strength was. So we strategized and saying, okay, you know what? If he plays first, he's gonna get his forwards. He's gonna win the first couple of rounds. We already had that embedded in us. So what we decided to do was we went a different route. We just played at a pace where we just played songs. A lot of music was played that night. We knocked off a lot of songs that might have been played later on if it was to go later on. So the first 2 rounds, our strategy was basically to just play and just stay at a level where it doesn't get too bad. Because we knew by the 3rd round, his box wouldn't be as strong as the first 2 rounds, and that would be our chance to capitalize. And what he did was he called for a lock-off. Before we even played our 3rd round, he felt that he's done enough in the clash that it was no need for tune for tune. And when he called for it, a portion of the dance, when I say a portion, I would say maybe 20 to 25% of the dance agreed with him. So he, and that was just basically one area of the clash agreed that it was no need for tune, for him to even play anymore after his 3rd round. But we came in second, so we still had a round to play. We still had a 20-minute round, and at that point, that was the time when we were gonna capitalize. We're gonna bring in our strength, the songs that we know can get, and spark. At that point, that's when he was gonna turn it up a little and get more involved and get, that was our strategy from the beginning, because we felt that after a couple of rounds, like I said, his box was weakened up, and what he did was he kind of cruised through the 3rd round. If you listen to it, he didn't play anything special. He made a couple of good speeches. He definitely, like I said, he was outstanding the whole night. He was outstanding. I take my hat off to him, hands down. But we all know in clash, it's kind of like a boxing match. You can't just assume that your opponent is down. You have to knock him out. And when the opportunity came for him to knock us out, to seal it and say, you know what? He didn't take that opportunity. And at the end of the day, it's up to the crowd to decide what goes on. The promoter acts is, tune for tune. 90% of the people that was in the clash, because you got to realize some people did leave because they felt that, we were playing to a standard that wasn't up to their liking. We bored out the crowd. But like I told you before, that was strategized. We wasn't trying to come in and start swinging against an opponent like King Shine. Every class you take, you got to sit down and analyze your opponent and see, how you can get around. And that's just something that we're learning as we're going. We've been in a lot of clashes the last couple of years, and we try to just take something out of each clash and learn from it. And one thing we learned is, no matter how much you're down, no matter how bad you're doing, there's always a point where it can change. And that's what we did. We came in the 3rd round, we came in strong enough where we had the crowd's attention again, and they said, okay, yeah, they gave us the 3rd round. So at the end of 3 rounds, Jimmy won 2 rounds convincingly. He won it convincingly. It wasn't up for discussion. I mean, he's funny. He did his thing. So we wasn't even arguing with that point. But we knew we had to come in strong that 3rd round, and that's what we did. And by doing that, it led to, the crowd asking for tune, and he decided not to. So, it's an ugly win, but like they said, a win is a win. We don't sit back and dwell on the clashes that we lost in the past, that we felt that we played good all night, and then at the end, it didn't work out for us. We just, we never give up. We never, no matter how bad the situation is, and that's how clashes are supposed to be. You don't go into a boxing match and box for, 8 rounds, 9 rounds, and then put your guard down for the next 3 rounds. You have to finish it off. You have to knock your opponent out. And I think that's where he didn't capitalize in this clash. So yeah, it's not a pretty win. But at the end of the night, we walk home with the trophy and we move on. But what it did do is it left room. It left a little gap open for maybe one day, for maybe a little rivalry to go. Maybe we can take this again and bring it to New York, on different grounds. Because after all, we were in his backyard. And, he definitely had a majority of the crowd, not taking away anything from his performance. He did well, but, in a clash, you got to fight to the end. A lot of people are going to agree with me. A lot of people are going to disagree with me. but everybody's entitled to their own opinion, and we're gonna move on from here, you know?
Last time we spoke, it was in the summer after your win over Barrier Free. Since then, you've taken part in a number of clashes in many different countries. Has there been a change in your philosophy when it comes to the number of clash bookings you accept? Have you adopted the quote-unquote young hawk clash every week if I can approach?
Well, the first couple of years we were still building. And the only way you're gonna get better is if you go out there and take on clashes, win or lose. You gotta just go out. You gotta be in it to win it. And for a young sound, you know, we take pride in what we've done over these past 6.5 years, where we're in a conversation now when it comes to sound clash. So we're getting calls from promoters, and you know, people want to see us. You know, so we have to take advantage of that because it's there now. So, you know, we're any clash that comes our way, if it makes sense, you know, if everything works out right, we'll take it. You know, it's not up for discussion. So, you know, we win some, we lose some, but at the end of the day, we still walk out there and we learn from it and we just move on. Because in order to get better, you have to be in it. You have to just, you know, keep going. You're not gonna just sit down, because a lot of time was invested, you know, and we worked hard, so it doesn't make sense to just sit around and let, you know. So I'm not saying we took the Young Hawk approach, because Young Hawk is, you know, a veteran sound, but we're in a position where, you know, if it makes sense, let's do it, you know.
I'm not going to ask you any specific questions about the other clashes you've taken part in since we last spoke, but are there any comments you'd like to make about any of them, or anything you feel needs clearing up or mentioning?
I mean, no. We don't sit down and dwell on, you know, our wins or our losses. We just learn from it and move on. You know, we had clashes in Canada, you know, which we lost. You know, big up Soul Survivor. We had a clash in California, which we won. You know, we had a clash in Antigua. You know, you win some, you lose some, but at the end of the day, you got to be in it. You know. And if you're looking for long-term jeopardy in this game, you have to get better. And the only way you're going to get better is if you stay active. It's all about active and staying out there, keeping your name out there, letting the people know that, you know, yes, you're there. So if that answered your question.
You mentioned a possible rematch with King Shine in New York. Are there any other sounds you would like to go up against again or test yourself against for the first time?
There's no one sound out there that's on our radar. You know, there are a lot of sounds, you know, everywhere, all over the world. So if it makes sense, if we get the call, and you know, then we'll take it. You know, it has to be the right timing, and you know, so on and so forth. So if it makes sense, we're there. You know, there's nothing concrete, you know, signed and delivered yet. So we're just here, and you know, we're gonna just build from this and move on.
Easy, congratulations, and thanks again for taking time to chat.
Anytime, Gibbo.
Gibbo presents